All right, hello, boys and girls. It's your buddy Mr. G, and I am here. And we're going to talk about Photoshop and the toolbar. Today, our goal is to get through the entire toolbar and all the tools and briefly describe what each tool does. So, we are going to go ahead and jump right into this. This assignment is going to be in our classwork, and we're going to go on down here to Module 1. You're going to find Photo Basics Part 1. But what we're looking for an image. For this assignment, we are looking for this image here of this red scooter. We're going to go ahead and click on that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and right click. That's two fingers, bunny ears there on your touchpad, or right click on your mouse. And we're looking for if we can go ahead and copy it. It's an easy way to get it into Photoshop. We go ahead and just copy that image. Go ahead and hit Command Tab, and we're going to jump over to Photoshop. We're going to make a new file. Now, all new files are always going to be your name. So I'm going to put John Grosvenor period tools is what this one's going to be called. We're going to switch to inches here, and we want this one to be wide, not tall. So we are going to go ahead and make this 10 inches wide. We're going to make it 8 inches tall, and we're going to have a resolution of 300. We're going to go ahead and create that file there. Okay, once we have that file, we're going to go ahead and hit V to paste our image in there. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have my first tool in the toolbar, which is the Move tool. The Move tool you'll see here moves a selection or layer. Okay, shortcut is V. Each tool you hover over top of it, it gives you a little video, kind of an example what it does, tells you a definition, and there in the little right here in the little square there, it has the letter V on it. That is the keyboard shortcut for each one of these. So I'll highlight that as we go. All right, now toolbar is what's in your hand. The options bar is up here is what you can do with what's in your hand. Now I want everybody to make sure that they have the show transformation controls selected. That'll give you the bounding box. The bounding box allows you to resize and reshape. You can also rotate with that. Command Z to go back. Okay, and we want to make this as large as we can in this frame. Okay, it's a little bit off in the uh, height and width, so we're going to hold down Option to expand from the center. We're going to go as wide as we can, right out to the edge, like that. We're going to go up here and hit Return, or hit this check mark to confirm that transformation. So that's the Move tool. Below the Move tool is 1, 2, 3. The next three tool sets are all our selection tools. Selections are very important in Photoshop. That's why we have so many different tools to make selections with. Okay, now we're just going to quickly go over these because this isn't really about selections. We're going to quickly talk about each one here. The marquee tools select in shapes, right? So I have a rectangle marquee tool here. I can go ahead and make a marquee right here. You notice I'll get a rectangle marquee right here just like that. See that? I've got myself a marquee of dancing ants there. Okay, now if I can't do anything. What a selection does is it isolates an area. So this area is now isolated. So anything we do in Photoshop is going to affect that particular area. Okay, all these tools do that. I also have a elliptical marquee. I can make a circle. Same thing. Okay, what we're going to do is go ahead and just make a rectangle marquee here. And just to give us something here, we can isolate it there and we can delete. So I'm just going to hit the delete key, make a hole in there. Now I've got a hole and I still have a selection. Now what's important about selections, once you make a selection of any of the marquee tools, that selection remains active until you get rid of it. So I either have to go up and hit select, deselect, or Command D to deselect that. Okay. Next tool here is our lasso tools. All of the lasso tools, as the illustration shows here, they draw a selection like this example here. So I've got the lasso tool, the polygon lasso, and magnetic lasso tool. We're just going to talk about the basic lasso tool, but you can see wherever I click and drag, it's going to draw a selection. The next set of tools are your smart tools. You got several smart tools here. Let's start with the magic wand. Magic wand is a selection tool that selects by color. So if I click on this door here, it's going to select that color. And if I keep clicking, it's going to keep adding on to that. And what it does, it selects every pixel adjacent to wherever pixel I click. And as soon as it runs into a different color select pixel, it's going to stop that selection. Okay, I'm going to hit Command D, get rid of that selection. The next smart selection tool we have is the quick selection tools. Quick selection tool allows you to click and drag over areas that it sees not only color, it also sees contrast of shape and light, so that I can select more complex things, and I can add to and subtract from selections just like I'm selecting my scooter here. I'm going to hit Command D and get past that. I'm going to go ahead and go down to the next tool. The smartest tool of all is the object selection tool. The object selection tool has some AI built into it. It actually sees some things here. So if I draw a box over top of this scooter here, it's going to think for a second, and then it's going to eventually select that scooter as it realizes the shape of that object. And you can see as I go around here, it kind of highlights things in pink that it sees as objects. Okay, like that door, this scooter, or this plant, and the various parts of the plant. Okay, it doesn't always work perfect, but it does a pretty good job, and it keeps continuing to get better with every iteration of Photoshop. Okay, so those are our selections. We're done with that. We're going to go ahead and hit Command D to deselect. We're going to go ahead and go down to the next tool, which is the crop tool. Crop tool just does the exact same thing as it does when you take pictures on your phone and pull out the crop tool. It's going to cut off and trim the fat off of pictures that you don't want. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and trim this down to take off these white bars at the top and bottom of our image here. Now that is transformation, and just like all transformations, we have to commit it by hitting the check mark or declining it right here by hitting the crossbar or redo the whole thing. Okay, so we're going to commit that. Got that. Everybody hit Command S, save your progress. All right, next tool is the this little label up here is the frame tool. Okay, now I do not use the frame tool very often. It's to place objects within a frame that you designate. I tend to use selections, and once you use selections, I feel like it kind of makes this tool obsolete, but I just don't use it a lot. But there it is. You can see what it does. We're just going to breeze on by that one. The next tool, the eyedropper tool, we do use a lot. The eyedropper tool allows you to select specific colors. Okay, got our color wheel up here. So right up here on our color wheel, you see it reflects what color we have. But as I click in the image, you can see it's going to pick up that color. It gives you a color wheel on there, and it gives you a contrast bar of where you color you selected and the new color that you are picking. So any color on here, I can click and get that exact color and click around and get those colors. Okay, so that's very helpful. Okay, because you will need to match colors. Okay, the next tool is the spot healing tool, and just like right here in our little animation from Photoshop, it shows that deleting the rocks on the background. Now this works really good when the background behind whatever the blemish is, in this case rocks here in the little animation, is very similar in pattern or color, right? So we've got this wood pattern behind there. Well, let's go ahead and we're going to take this. I'm going to make this a little smaller. If you look right above your return key, you're going to see your left and right bracket keys. Anytime I see a dauber or a round brush tip, that is going to tell me automatically that this is a tool that is controlled with those bracket keys for size. Left and right, one makes it bigger, one makes it smaller. You also see that size up here going, and because it's a brush, I can go ahead and select hard or soft tips or anything like that. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see. I'm going to attempt to take some of this abrasions and peeling paint off of this door with the spot healing brush. And what it sees it's mostly this teal color, so it's probably going to take away a good bit of those stains pretty easily and replace it with information. This is another tool that works with artificial intelligence. It kind of assumes what is the information that needs to be filled in. It's not always going to get it right, but it does a pretty good job. And as I said, all of the AI in Photoshop keeps getting better with every iteration of the program. And you can see there it does a pretty good job of erasing those and then filling it in with appropriate information so that when I zoom back out, it looks pretty darn good there and looks like it was never there. Golden grams. Moving forward, got our brush tool. Brush tool does is what you think, it paints. So you can get different colors, different patterns. You can paint with all kinds of things. There are literally thousands of brushes that have been made for Photoshop. You have a basic set up here. I'm going to go up here. Now you can open up, either you go to window and open up your brushes palette and see all of your brushes. And you can pull that open. I like this one over here because I can kind of stick it open and close. You got your settings. All of your brushes are right in here. You can also access those guys up here as well and pull all those same brushes, the size and everything. Now in here, what I want you to notice, there are three different main kind of brushes. There are soft brushes that are going to have a soft edge. There are hard brushes that are going to have a hard edge. And there are pressure sensitive brushes like this right here. This tapered end on the front and back denotes a pressure sensitive brush. Those pressure sensitive brushes are going to react to any tablet that you're using with a stylus that reacts to pressure, such as a Wacom tablet or anything like that. Okay. In our classroom, we have Wacom tablets, so you can use those, and you'll see this one says it's a soft round pressure size. This is a soft round pressure size as well. So the harder I push, the wider that's going to make the brush. The lighter I think, the thinner the stroke will be. Okay. So I'm just going to get a soft brush here, and you can double click on that. And I'm going to take my size down here. Now I'm going to make a red letter B. Now any of the brush tools that operate with paint and color, you usually can hold down Option to get your eyedropper tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select this red from here, and I'm going to go ahead and just make a red letter B on my wall. And we're going to mark that on there. So there's the brush tool. Okay. We also have our opacity up here in the options, which allows you to turn the opacity up and down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this brush here. I'm going to select this green out of this plant here with that opacity down, and I'm going to make a red letter A. And you can see with that opacity turned down, it kind of shows that texture behind it. It's a good way to emulate like graffiti on a wall there. So there is that in your brush tool. Moving forward, you got the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool, what it does, it actually copies something from one place on an image and puts it on another, right? So it's literally going to clone an area, okay? So if I wanted to make more of this plant here, I have to first tell Photoshop where I want to paint from and then where I want to paint to, okay? So step one of that is to go and grab your dauber and make it the appropriate size for what we're doing. I'm going to make it about that big, okay? To set your clone source with your clone source tool selected, I will hold down Option. You'll see my cursor turns to a bullseye. I will hold down Option. I will click and release once on my touchpad, and then I'll release Option. I've now set the clone source as that plant there. Now you can see as I move around, it's got that little green dot. And if I click and start dragging out, it's going to start painting there. And you can kind of see that little X that's tracking with my brush there around there, and it's just going to follow that. Okay, anywhere I go, I can paint the whole plant down here. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command Z. I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. Again, if I want to make two of these mailboxes, I would hold down Option, click on it one time, let go of my Option, and then directly under it, I'm going to paint in another mailbox, and it'll look like there's a second mailbox right underneath the first one there. Super duper. All right, moving on. The history brush. I don't use the history brush a whole lot. I just traditionally, there's not really a reason. It is a useful tool. I just don't find myself personally using it a whole lot. But what it does, it takes the painting and it will return it to a previous state. So I'm going to move myself here. I'm still on layer one. We're not going to talk about the layers right now. But my history brush, if I get my history brush, okay, it's not letting me paint on here. Okay, cannot use the history brush because the current canvas size does not match that of the history state. Okay, so I've changed the canvas so it's not going to let me do it there. So I'm not going to fight the history brush, but what it does, it returns it to another state. Okay, like I said, I don't use it a whole lot. It kind of shows you there. It can paint away these clouds if you had added the cloud and balloon. And my biggest problem with it, it looks exactly like the brush tool. So in class, kids constantly grab the wrong one because they look the same. Next is the eraser tool. What does the eraser tool? Well, it erases things. I'm just going to erase a hole in there. You see it erased a hole in my image. Does what you'd think. Can also is a brush dauber, so you can make that bigger or smaller with your bracket keys. Get a harder soft brush or a tapered brush. Next is our gradient tool. Gradient tool fills gradients. Gradients are transitions from one color to another. Okay. Now, which way I drag and which way I click is going to direct which way that gradient's going to go. And it's always going to default to my front and back colors, right? So right down here, I have my foreground and my background color. Right here, it shows that transition of that green to that red, what it's going to look like. And then over here, it's mimicked again in my front and background color on my color wheel. Okay, so if I change that foreground color, let's say I change it to an orange over here, it's going to change that we're now have an orange for foreground to a red in the background, and it'll have this. Okay, now to use the uh, gradient tool, you click and you drag across your image in the direction you want the gradient to go, and then it's going to fill. Okay, and we don't have a selection going to isolate where we wanted it, so it's going to fill the entire image. Okay, which is not usually what I do unless I was like making a background. But you can see the direction that I go with my gradient is going to make a difference as to how that gradient shows up. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command Z, get back to where I was at there. Next tool in our list is the paint bucket fill tool. Okay, again, just like your paintbrush where you can select with holding down the option, turning on the eyedropper tool, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select this tan kind of color here. I'm going to go ahead and fill this area here. The paint bucket tool works just like the magic wand tool is whenever pixel I click on, it's going to continue to fill pixels until it runs into a different color. Now these are all white here up to the edge, so it's going to fill that square with all the same color till there. Okay. The 3D material drop tool, we don't really use that a whole lot in this class, so I'm going to skip over that one. Your next set of tools are going to be these kind of photo retouching tools. So I've got the blur tool. Okay. The blur tool, I'm going to zoom in over here just a little bit, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Now the blur tool is a delicate tool. So if I just click once here, I'm looking at this number 2 down here on this stock image here. You can see as I scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub, it's going to blur more. Okay, I've got it set to 100%, but it blurs pretty slow is my point. It is a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, so you have to be patient with it. It's for photo retouching, so you don't want it to be this super powerful tool that goes and blurs everything out of existence every time. Alternatively, with the blur tool, you have the sharpen tool, and the sharpen tool is going to sharpen pixels. Like if I use it here on the headlight, you can see this is going to start kind of simplifying those colors and simplifying and simplifying and kind of reducing it down as I scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub. And it's going to take it from like thousands of colors, that really smooth transition in that glass, to a few colors, and maybe down to like a few dozen colors. So the more you sharpen, the less colors you're going to have. Moving down here, also in here, I have the smudge tool. Smudge tool does what you think it is. It's going to smudge things just like if this was a pastel drawing. I'll hit Command Z, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to just smudge the edge of this box here to kind of blend it in with the wall just a little bit. Now it's important to note that the smudge tool doesn't paint anything. It may look like it's painting, but it doesn't. It only moves the colors underneath it that you're dragging it across. Okay, so it's not painting. Also, the same thing with the next set of tools, our dodge and burn tools here. Dodge and burn is an old photographic term from chemical processes used if a photograph was too dark. We could lighten it by dodging it and chemically brightening the picture. Alternatively, if it was too light, we could also darken it by burning it chemically a little bit. So that's what these refer to. So I'm going to get the burn tool first because it's the easiest one. Burn makes things darker. I'm going to go and zoom in here on my saddle of my scooter a little bit, make this a little bit smaller here. And you can see as I put around, it just subtly does it. But if I just sit in one spot and just keep clicking, just like if I was putting heat on it, I'm going to burn a hole in it. And it's going to keep getting darker and darker and darker. Okay. So that's what the burn does. It doesn't paint. What it does, it takes the pixels that are there and it makes them step by step darker and darker until you obviously have made it like all the way to black. Alternatively, you have the dodge tool. Dodge tool is going to make things lighter. So I'm going to put it right next to that. I'm going to do the same thing, just click, 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 and it's going to, if I keep just clicking in one area, it's going to keep until it kind of bleaches out a hole in the saddle there. Okay. And then you also have the sponge tool. With the sponge tool, it's going to do the same thing, but the sponge tool, what it does, it doesn't darken or lighten. What it does, it desaturates an area. So it'll eventually keep moving it closer and closer to gray. So if I keep clicking on here, it eventually will pull the color out until it is down to its base of black and white and gray. Moving down to my pen tool. Pen tool makes paths. Okay, so if we make paths with our pen tool, we would make it with the pen tool right there. Okay. Now paths are a whole lesson unto themselves. If you're not familiar with them, they're good for like tracing things. You can make shapes. Over here in your, pull this up here. You have a paths palette right here with your layers, and I'll just touch on this because we've made a path here. Down in your paths palette, you can click on that after you make a path. You can do several things. You can hold over top of it, like this one here. I can fill the path with the foreground color, so I can fill that path. I can take that path and I can stroke the path with a brush, or whatever brush I happen to have. I can stroke that around there. I can turn that path into a selection like that. I can turn that selection back into a path. So several things that we can do, and I can even make a mask from that. And if I hit that, it's going to make a mask on my layers panel. Okay, so that's what paths do. They're useful. All kinds of things we can do with them, but we're not going to talk a whole lot about that right now. Let's go ahead and move forward into our typography tools. Typography tools are going to be very similar to what you've done in other documents and Word documents. They're going to create typography, right? With different fonts and sizes and colors, right? So let's go up here and let's just zoom out here. And right up here, I'm going to click right here. You're always going to have that fill. I'm using the font Ultra Bold in Gill Sans, but I can change my font here. So if I wanted to change to let's say the circus font or anything, I just go down the list of any of my fonts I have on my other. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go with impact because everybody has impact. I'm just going to select impact. Boom, I got it there. If there's an alternative like a heavy or a stout or a bold, you can set that. Your point size here, you can either set your numbers by grabbing a specific number. You can also resize your font by grabbing your move tool and moving and resizing it just like you do with anything else with the move tool. Okay, so we can go ahead and move that here. Okay, let's go ahead type on this, and if I triple click on it, it brings me back to it, highlights it, just like when you triple click in a Word document. I'm going to go ahead, or your Google Doc, I'm going to go ahead and let's just make typo on the door there. I've got a color right here. If I want to change the color, I have to highlight it. So if I want to change that color and pick a different color, let's pick a blue. How about a purple there to stay against that door? Then I can change it like that. Okay. You also have some different modifications we can do that, but we can go ahead and change those like that. And that is typography. Okay. Now the typography comes with some other ones. You have typography vertical and horizontal. So you can not just type from left to right, but up and down. And you also have a mask type tool, which we're not going to get into right now. Your direct selection tools and your path selection tools, what those are for, if I can get a little video to come up here, let's go. Give me that. Go ahead, hold over there. What those are going to do, those are going to manipulate your path. So we got our path right here, and we're going to move that path with the path direction tool, or we can grab the direct selection tool and we can actually grab the handles on that path and move it around like that. So those are fun when you get to there. All right, shape tools. Shape tools also handy. They make shapes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead on this hole I made in the wall. I'm going to go ahead and drag a circle over top of that. It's going to make a shape. Okay, now when you make shapes, they have a fill and a stroke. I've got a shape here. I've got no fill, and I've got a stroke of green. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on here, and I'm going to fill that with red. Okay, so that I have that kind of olive and red on the door there in my shape. I've got other shapes down here. I've got ellipses, triangles, polygons, lines, and custom shapes. Those are all fun to play with. So, but they all do very similar things. Okay, rotate. The rotate view tool is the R key. Now I use this quite a bit. I use the quick key on this quite a bit when I'm drawing. So when I'm drawing and you're drawing in your notebook or on your sketchbook, you turn it all the time, right? So when people go into digital art, they find it so difficult because they don't turn the canvas. But you can do the exact same thing in here by just grabbing and turning it left or right. And you can then use your drawing tablet or your mouse to go ahead and paint and draw as you like. Okay. Now, you can also, as you turn, if you hold down the shift key, it'll allow you to move in increments of 10. Okay, below that is our magnifying glass, so we can zoom in, hold down option, zoom out, just basic navigation. You can also pinch and pull if you have a touchpad, or if you have a Wacom tablet or drawing tablet, you can also hold down Z, get your tool, and just drag at 45 degrees up and down. It'll zoom in as well. Okay, Now, oh, I skipped one. With the rotate tool, you also have the hand tool. The hand tool is going to allow you to, once zoomed in, you can move your page around. It's not going to move objects like the move tool. It's just going to move your entire image around. So that pretty much wraps up our entire bank of the toolbar with the essentials. Please have a super day and stay creative, and I will see you soon.